Good evening. My name is Layton Dusin, and I am a co-chair of the MSBA Young Lawyers Section Education Committee. Along with my co-chair, Rima Kakani, we would like to welcome you to this evening's presentation, Tackling the Bar Exam and Employment in the Time of COVID-19. We have two great speakers this evening. First, Bridget Kurlick, a director of legal education for Barbary, is going to speak about what is currently known regarding the upcoming remote Maryland bar exam, as well as the UBE. She will also give tips and best practices for preparing to take the bar exam. Next, Randy Lewis, a managing director of Major, Lindsay & Africa, an attorney recruiting firm, is going to give tips and advice regarding looking for jobs in this ongoing pandemic, video interviewing, and helpful resources to assist with your employment search. If you have any questions during the presentation, please either email them to angela@msba.org, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, or you can simply type them in the chat box, and questions will be answered at the end of the program. Bridget, take it away.
Bridget, you're muted.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for inviting me to come and be a part of this panel discussion this evening. My plan for this evening with our time together is to share information with you about the bar exam, about what it's going to look like, whether you are taking the bar in October or a future UBE administration of the bar exam. And then as was shared in the introduction, then we will switch gears a little bit, talk about best practices, tips and tricks for making that transition from the bar exam that you expected to take to the one that you'll actually take. And then finally, we'll wrap up talking about managing your last few weeks before the bar exam. Before we go any further, I wanted to, first of all, let you know that I feel for you and that I understand that this is not the road that you thought it would be if you are planning to take the October bar exam. It's been a bumpy road. It's been a prolonged journey to get to this point. However, if you are an October taker, we are so close to that finish line. So I'm so confident that if you create a plan, you stick with it, you know what you're up against, before you know it, you are going to cross that finish line from being a law school graduate to a licensed attorney. All right, so let's get to it. And let's first talk about the uniform bar exam. So this is the bar exam that would be offered in a typical administration. This is the bar exam that all of you thought you would be taking when it was still scheduled for July. And as far as we know, up until right before we started this presentation together, this is going to be the bar exam that will be administered if you're taking February 2021 or later. So as long as you are not an October bar taker, as you know, things are obviously changing each day and there's new information and new protocols. However, as of right now, this is the bar exam that we're looking at as long as you're not taking this upcoming bar. So this will be a bit of review for those of you who are deep into bar review, but just bear with me. And this is going to be information about what your bar exam will look like if you're taking it after this October. So the uniform bar exam, or UBE, as you will often hear it referred to, is going to be a 2-day exam. There's going to be one day that is going to be a multiple choice day, which is what we refer to as the MBE, or multi-state bar examination. And then you will have another day that's going to be your written day that will be two different components. It will be the MEE and the MPT. So let's talk about each of those in turn. Let's start with the MBE. So this is going to be 200 multiple choice questions, and it's going to be broken down into two 3-hour periods. Again, if you're doing February 2021 or after. 7 different subjects are tested on the MBE, and these are things that you probably took as classes when you were 1Ls. We have civil procedure, con law, contracts, crim law, crim pro, evidence, real property, and torts. So these are things that you may not have seen for a while or thought about for a while, But when you're preparing for the bar exam, you are going to be spending a lot of time with these subjects, and these are going to make up a lot of your the content and the time that you're spending preparing for the bar exam. So the MBE in a typical bar exam administration is usually day 2 of testing. So the first day of testing is going to be the written day, as we mentioned. Let's talk first about the MEE. Again, that stands for Multi-State Essay Examination. So just to make this clear, if you are taking the Uniform Bar Exam in Maryland, you're taking the Maryland Bar, you are not going to have any Maryland-specific law on your bar exam in these 2 days of testing. So, you may hear students taking other jurisdictions, Virginia, for example, where on their essay day, they will have state-specific law. That is not true for you if you are taking the MEE. So the MEE is going to be 6 essay questions offered over a 3-hour time period. It's going to cover the following subjects: agency, conflicts, corporations, family law, partnerships and LLCs, secure transactions, wills, trusts, and then also all of those subjects that we already talked about for the MBE day. So it's a lot of information. But hopefully these are some of the classes that you took while you were in law school. And if you are in a position where you still have a few semesters ahead of you and you're looking at course planning, these are great subjects to look into taking. The second component of your written bar exam day is going to be the MPT, or Multi-State Performance Test. And I think that the best comparison for the MPT, for those of you who might not have familiarity with this quite yet, it's kind of analogous to the closed memo that you did as a 1L. You're going to be given a fictional case file, and you're going to be told to do something with it. So you're going to have 2 of these on a typical bar exam administration, and they're each going to be 90 minutes. It's going to be a legal research and writing project. So the biggest difference between your closed memo from maybe your 1L year and this is timing. So with that, maybe you had a few days to do it. With this, you're only going to have 90 minutes. So again, timing is the big challenge here. The good news about the MPT is that you don't have to bring with you any substantive legal knowledge. Everything that you're going to be using with the MPT is going to be in that case file that they're giving you. So there's going to be about 15 to 20 pages of things like an assignment. It'll tell you exactly what they want you to do with what they're giving you. Pay close attention to that tone that they're asking you to take. Is it a letter to a case file? Is it a letter to a managing partner? You have to be careful there with what exactly you are being tasked with. You're going to have cases, and these cases are going to be, they're not going to be real cases. So if they sound familiar to a real case that you may have read before, get that out of your mind, because you really need to focus in on exactly what's in front of you here. The same thing goes with statutes and regulations. This is going to be fictional. And then last but not least, you're going to be given the facts. So that is the MPT in a nutshell. This is the Uniform Bar Exam in a nutshell, and this is what you can expect for those of you who are taking future bar exam administrations. Next slide. So for any of you watching that are taking the bar exam in just a few weeks, obviously the plan to take that bar exam that we just talked about has been a little bit flipped upside down. So I wanted you to notice when the slides switched, the good news is there were a whole lot of similarities. A lot of the things are going to be the same, and that is great news. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. So what exactly is testing going to look like? So on Tuesday, October 6th, you're going to be taking the MBE, or a version of the MBE, except notably, this is going to be obviously all online. Totally understand absolutely that this poses unique challenges. That being said, the subject matter that's going to be tested on each of these 3 components of your bar exam, the substance and the testable topics are identical. So everything that you have done so far, it still matters, it still counts, and you're still going to be responsible for that information. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of reassurance and lets you know that all of the time studying these subjects has definitely not been in vain. This is still going to be the same. This list of subjects will be the same as what you will encounter on the remote Maryland bar exam. The other big difference, besides being online, is that the amount of questions has been cut. So we talked about on the previous slide how typically the MBE or multi-state bar exam is 200 multiple choice questions. Well, for you all taking this October exam, it's going to be 100 multiple choice questions. 7 subjects remain the same, and instead of having 2 3-hour sessions, we are going to have 2 90-minute sessions with a break in between. Switching gears and talking about the day before. I know these are out of chronological order, but the day before, which would be Monday, October 5th, right around the corner. That is when you are going to do your written day. That is when you are going to be completing the abridged version, the online bar exam version of the MEE and the MPT. Again, these subjects are identical. This is exactly what you had been studying all along, except for instead of 6, you're going to have 3 essay questions in one session in that 90 minutes. The MPT, instead of doing 2 MPTs for this upcoming bar exam, for the remote exam in October, you're only going to have 1 of these. So everything that you've talked about so far, everything that you have been studying, all of those practice problems that you did, that's all still good information. And that is the great news about this switch to the remote bar exam. So, so many similarities, a few differences, obviously being online and being an abridged version of your exam. Next slide, please. All right, so for everyone who's watching who is making the switch, I know that you've had some time to sit with this news about the change of plans for the October bar exam. But in the final weeks that we have leading up to those 2 important testing days, I wanted to share some information with you that will hopefully be helpful so that you can utilize the remaining time that you have, come up with a plan, really familiarize yourself with exactly what you're up against. So the first thing I wanted to be sure that I pointed out was the FAQ document that can be found on the marylandcourts.gov/BLE Board of Law Examiners website. This is where you're going to go to gain all of the important information about any changes that may happen. Hopefully there's no more. And more importantly, this is where you're going to find all of the information, the explanations of what's allowed, what's not allowed, what testing will actually look like, the fact that you will have remote scratch paper, highlighting capabilities. All of that is going to be included in that important FAQ document. So please spend some serious time with that document. The more that you do and the better prepared that you are, it's just going to take some of that anxiety off your plate. The more that we can know about this exam and what we're up against, the better you're going to feel. You know, there's enough balls in the air. You've been juggling a lot this summer, so don't let there be those kind of variables. This information is there, and you know, it's ready for the taking. So please be sure to familiarize yourself with all of that information about logistics, etc. You all at this point should have received an email from ExamSoft, which is Exemplify is the software, asking you or saying that you can register. So the registration period is open, and it is only for a limited amount of time. So when they say there are these deadlines coming up, they definitely mean it. And these deadlines, I believe there's one coming up here in just a couple of weeks in terms of registering for Exemplify. So pay attention to that. Make sure that you're following all those instructions. If your inbox is anything like mine, it's a bit overloaded. However, please be sure that you are paying attention. That's really important, and that's how they're communicating that relevant information. Exam day procedure. That's the next thing that we can sort of take that unknown out of this equation. I know it seems like everything's super different, but in a lot of ways, doing that prep ahead of time is going to make it seem second nature. It's going to seem familiar if you start practicing and you start familiarizing yourself with all that information. Make sure that your computer has the system requirements that are necessary to take this exam online. There's actually a lighting tips and tricks document that's on the website as well. Things that you may not have thought about before. Make sure that there's not a light right behind your head. Something that's in there, an example of what I'm talking about here. You need to take away everything that could potentially identify who you are during the proctoring of this exam. So for example, I have diplomas hanging up behind me on the wall. So if this were the space that I was going to be taking the exam in, I would want to make sure to pull those down, just to make sure that, I'm following all the regulations, being aware of all of that early on, as soon as I could. Set up your exam space. Which brings us to the next point of practice conditions. You need to be ready for game day. So as much as you can, set up your space where you're going to be taking this exam, whether that is, in your home office, whether no matter where that is, make sure that you sit in that space and that you spend some serious time practicing taking simulated exams. So your bar prep provider likely offers exam simulations. So I encourage you to do those simulations under exam conditions. The virtual scratch paper, practice with that during this session. Those lighting things, practice with that. Do it at the same time of day. Make sure that you are, waking up the time you're going to wake up on exam day. This is a dress rehearsal, and make sure that you are equipping yourself with every piece of information and every experience that you possibly can to take out that unknown before we go into the exam today. The next thing is that outlining is so important, more important than ever. So as you have begun preparing for the bar exam, you have undoubtedly watched bar exam writing workshops. You've been practicing, you've been reading about how to write a great answer for the bar exam. Again, the good news is that all still applies. Of course, you won't be able to sit there with a pen and paper and annotate like you used to, but there are other options, and you will have that scratch paper, you will have the highlighting ability. So once you feel comfortable with all of those different things that are the options that are permitted, practice with that. And before you start writing, you have to think through your answer. I think that when we made that switch from in-person exams to online, I know that if this were me personally, I would have thought, if I'm taking an online exam, I just got to get in there and I got to start writing. I'm not going to be able to just take down scratch paper notes with a physical pen and paper. So let's jump in, but don't do that. Try not to fall for that. Try to really, really, really think about what you're doing. Think about what exactly is being tested here. Spend some time to think about how you're going to structure your answer. Now more than ever, keep in mind that writing a well-organized answer is a huge component of doing well on this thing. So if you can sit there and think about exactly how you're going to structure your essay, the points that you're going to make, which facts you are going to use in your application section, and it comes off as a very clear, well thought out answer, that is going to matter now more than ever. So resist that temptation to just jump in and start typing. Next slide. All right, so Obviously, if you are studying for the bar exam now, when you all embarked on this journey, you thought that you would be taking this exam in July. Now that this has been more of a prolonged experience, a prolonged journey, I certainly understand that life is happening still around us. It's hard to set aside this many months to just devote to the bar exam. So, if you, as much as you can in these final weeks, remove any of that extra. Try to be a little selfish with your time as much as you can. Prioritize these final weeks. However, if you are working, and that's unavoidable with this the shift in testing dates, or maybe you have family obligations, life is still going on around us, like we said, there are definitely some things that you can do to make sure that you're getting the most out of these now less than about 4 weeks before the exam. So even if you're not working, still great things to pay attention to as we enter this final review period. The first thing being utilizing small blocks of time. I think that oftentimes, when we look at the perfect exam conditions or perfect test prep conditions, we say we're going to block off the morning, and I'm going to start my lecture, and then I'm going to go in and do my practice questions and all of that. But that might not be an option anymore. You may not any longer have those blocks of time, and that is totally okay if that is your reality. Hopefully you've been studying for months now, and you have checked off a lot of your assignments that you have encountered in your bar prep journey. So now is the time to be a little bit more flexible. So if you're working, if you have other obligations, and if that is something that is unavoidable in these next few weeks, try to think about your study time, not in big blocks of time, but small blocks. So do you have 15 minutes while you're getting dressed in the morning to re-listen to a portion of a lecture that may be giving you trouble? If you are commuting, or if you have some time, you can step outside and take a walk. Listen to a lecture again. Keep your study material with you so that as these periods of time come up, you can make the most out of them. So again, do not wait until the end of the day. Try to find small periods of time throughout the day to make studying possible. Take those 10 minutes where you can get them. Even if you can't finish an entire set of practice questions as it may appear in your study plan, you could still do a few of them. So keep those with you, keep those handy, and make the most out of the time that you have until the exam. Make a daily as well as a weekly schedule. So now that we're just a few weeks out from the bar exam, take a look at all of those different testable subjects, those subjects that we talked about on those first two slides. Make a list of all of those subjects, and then take a look at your calendar. Take a look at the days that you have remaining, and take a look at your personal life and your work schedule. Make a schedule so that you can review each of these subject areas in turn. It may not be possible for you, if you are working, to stick very strictly to a program that's prescribed by a bar review provider, and that's okay. Look at it as a weekly schedule. If you know Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be super crazy at work, totally fine. Make up for that on Saturday and Sunday. Most exam prep providers schedule on weekends to be a little bit lighter, so you can absolutely make up for that. Be honest with yourself. It is human nature for us to want to keep practicing the things that we are good at. Maybe you are excellent at evidence MBE questions, and so it's probably your inclination to just keep doing them because you see the score and it's high and it looks good. Now's not the time for that. obviously encourage yourself, pat yourself on the back. You deserve all of the kudos. However, be honest with what you're good at and what subjects still might need a little bit more work. Maybe your essay writing still needs some more work. Instead of ignoring essay writing and focusing only on MBE questions, be honest and take that information into account when you're creating that daily and weekly study schedule for the next few weeks that we have leading up. That being said, once you identify those areas of strength and weakness, subjects, exam question formats, take one that you're really good at and that you like and pair it with one that you may be struggling with or that you just don't like to do. Before you go to bed at night, spend some time reviewing. If you've already gotten through most of the assignments that are components of your bar review course, or even if you're just feeling like you might need to do a little bit of extra review, this is the time where memorization really, really sets in. This is the time where everything that you have learned all kind of comes together. You can commit it to memory. You are able to start issue spotting in your sleep. These final weeks are so important for that reason. So find time to do that review, and I would encourage you to pair a strong subject with a weak subject just to make it a little bit easier on yourself. As you're going through and reviewing, if there's something that you really understand, maybe it's a whole subtopic, maybe it's just a portion of a page, put a check mark next to it. So next time when you're going through, you know that you can just skim it, and so that you can pare down the material in this way. I think that it's something that we should all focus on doing as we're looking ahead to taking a bar exam, and that I want you to try to remember is that you can't know everything. There's no way. And people who are passing the bar exam, they don't know everything. They know enough to get by, and they have solid understanding of a subject as a whole. I want you to trust yourself. You have seen this information, you have gone through it, you've been spending months wrestling with this information, making sense of it. So it's in there. And these next few weeks are really when it's going to solidify, when you're able to quickly recall that information, and the pieces are just going to start kind of falling into place as we go forward. Pay attention to what's important. If you keep seeing a subtopic come up in your practice questions, there's probably a reason for that. Like we said before, you can't know everything, but there are certain things that are showing up on bar exams regularly. So, if you've spent a lot of time with something, if it was a big part of your review, if it's a big part of your outline, you're seeing it in questions as part of the lecture, chances are that is where you should really be focusing your precious study time in the last few weeks. So if we're doing all of these things, and we're sticking with the plan, I promise that, this will all be a distant memory soon enough. The last thing I wanted to share with you is that you are absolutely not alone. I just want to remind you of all of that. When people have told you throughout this entire experience, call me if you need anything. I'm always here if you need to talk. Now's the time to take advantage of some of that. Call in your favors. Remember that you have done such hard things to get to this point. Think back to taking the LSAT, how that was so unknown at that time, and now that's a distant memory. Think back to your 1L year, your first final exam that you ever took. All of that was unknown, but you are capable, you got through it, and this is no different. You have been preparing for this exam for months. You are not doing it by yourself. Everyone is in the same position as you. Everyone is experiencing the same stress, the same anxiety, the same sense of the unknown and concern for that. So, like I said, if you stick with the plan, if you lean on those around you, if you're honest with those around you in terms of setting up your schedule for the next few weeks, consume all of that information that you can that's on that FAQ doc. And before you know it, this is, like I said, going to be a distant memory. You are so close to the finish line, and you are absolutely capable of doing this. So I wanted to share my contact information. This is my email and my cell phone number. If there is anything at all that you want to talk through, if you just want someone to hear you out, if you are looking for more information about the bar exam, even if you're not taking it in October, if you're taking it in the future, please feel free to reach out to me. And if I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does. So I know that this has been a lot. It's been a long road, but we are so close to the finish line, and you absolutely got this. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. Please feel free to submit any questions, and I will come back and answer those.
Well, hello, this is Randy Lewis, and I'm going to be talking with you about employment in the time of COVID. And I'm laughing because it's tough. And what Bridget said initially really stuck with me, which is this is not the road you thought it would be. And so part of what you're going to be doing is readjusting your thinking. And so, and you can change the slide. So we're gonna talk about 5 things basically: advice to law students with jobs, looking for jobs during the pandemic, accepting the pandemic reality, maximizing LinkedIn, and just taking care of yourself during the pandemic. So you can go. So go to the next slide. So. I'm just going to give you a minute with law students who have jobs. And I just would say to you, work hard to show your value. You will be noticed for your hard work. If you're working with a law firm, billing your hours is pretty critical. It always has been, but now in the time of COVID, the law firm makes money from billing its clients your time, and you need to learn how to bill. They'll teach you, or they've already taught you. And then you need to, I would say, bill your time as you're doing it, and also bill it every day. Get into really good billing hygiene. If you're working remotely, join as many remote law firm meetings and social events that you can, so that you begin to build relationships internally. Ask questions. The only question that's stupid is the one you don't ask. I'm sure you've heard that before. And then you want to find multiple mentors. You probably will have a designated mentor, but that doesn't mean that both in the firm and outside you shouldn't have de facto mentors. Okay, next slide, please. So the next few slides are going to be about looking for jobs during the pandemic. So I would say, in terms of priorities, you've got to have your resume and a generic cover letter ready to go anytime. You want to make sure that your resume is consistent with your LinkedIn profile and any other online profiles. And that doesn't mean that your LinkedIn profile needs to contain everything on your resume, but the positions need to be the same and in the same order. The other thing that I think is really important is to understand how to use video interviewing skills, because the majority of the firms are, and businesses in general, are using video interviews. There are a couple of handouts that you're going to get with the PowerPoints, and a couple of handouts are related to video and telephone interviews, and there's much more information in there. But I would say 3 critical things: lighting, background, and looking into the camera. So right now I'm looking absolutely into the camera. one of the things that you don't want to do, and that I've seen, is that you don't want to do what I'm doing now, which is looking down, because as I'm looking down, you're getting nervous, and I'm looking awkward. You don't want to do that. You want to look confident, and part of that is looking into the camera or near the camera. The other thing you want to do is start building your brand, and that means a lot of things, but it's basically how people perceive you. You want to start. You should have done that in law school, but it's a continuation of that, and it's a professional brand. And the other thing is you want to join alumni associations. So it could be, your high school, it could be law school or undergrad, or other associations. You want to join them, and pick certain things that you go to. Well, right now it would be virtual, but do it. If you're volunteering, continue to do that virtually. You never know who you're going to meet doing that. And then I would say join and actively participate in the MSBA Young Lawyers section. It will be an important part of your network and building your brand. I know so many people who started out in the Young Lawyers section of the MSBA, and then, as they grew, they were on committees and they got into leadership, and then they grew into leadership in other bar related and industry entities. And it's just a really good thing for your professional development and networking. And then I'm going to talk about this more in the next slide. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Oh, now I'm confused. Okay. All right. Well, let's just keep going. All right. So the first thing that you need to do, this is right, the next slide, is you're going to be reaching out to your resources. And your first resource should be the professionals in your career services office of your law school. And maybe you've never reached out to anyone, but now's the time to do it, even if you didn't while you were in law school, because you've got very dedicated career service professionals who know what's going on in the community, and they want to help you. And I will just give a big shout out to my buddies at the University of Maryland, Dina Billion and Allie Emerson, both of whom are really great resources. And there are other people at the University of Baltimore and other career services offices in the area, in the DC area, who are phenomenal, including some professors like Professor Meyerson and Professor Higginbotham at the University of Baltimore. People really will go to bat for their students because they want them to be hired and be successful. So this is now strategically, this is what I think you should do. If you're good in Excel, use an Excel spreadsheet to make a list, or if you prefer, just use a Word doc and make a list of everyone you know. And that could be family, friends of family, maybe lawyers that you know, or lawyers that you may have met at a school event, or lawyers whose webinars you saw in the last year, and anyone else, in industry, in business, in government, that you have any kind of connection with. It could be the secretary of a judge, or a paralegal somewhere, and every single name and their title should go on this list. And you should have their, if you can, their email, their phone number. If they have a LinkedIn page and if they have a website, that should go in that next column. And then your final column should be notes. And the notes should contain every time you reach out to that person, the date, generally what was said, whether that person referred you to others. And then as people refer you to others, you add them to the list, but always note who referred whom. This is like a job. And if you get really organized, there should be a lot of people on that list, and it should be growing. So what do you do with the list? So you're going to reach out, as I mentioned, and you could reach out by email. You could reach out by phone. You could reach out by LinkedIn. And you just simply want to say, I just want to let you know I'm graduating from law school, or I graduated from law school, I'm taking, or I'm going to be taking, or I just took the bar. And I'm actively looking for employment and wanted to connect with you to ask for your advice about where and how I should look. Do you have some time to talk to me? And that's basically it. And it's going to be different depending on the relationship you have. Could be a professor, but it definitely should be also your career services people. And so you also want to you're gonna do that. Some people are not going to be helpful, but most people will. And you may get, let me connect you with this other person, or let me tell you what I think you should do. Very few people are going to have jobs for you, but this is going to be about connecting. And you always want to send a thank you email, and it just could be 2 lines. Thank you so much. It should be, I would say, dear, and then the name of the person, paragraph. I'm a formal person. And because it's better to be formal. It's part of your brand. And then you just say, thank you for the time you spent talking to me today. Your insights were very helpful. And then you might want to follow up with something else they said, and then it's my best, or sincerely, or whatever your closing is, and that's it. And then one of the things I like people to do on their emails, let's say you have a Google email, is to put your name have your signature line, which will be your name, your full name, your cell phone, and then your email address. And if you want to put at the bottom 2020 law graduate, you can, if you want. And then, keep in touch when it makes sense with these people. Sometimes keeping in touch is really helpful. And you'll kind of know the ones that you can reach out to. Next slide is, all right. So then I have now I have some going down a little deeper. How do you look? What do you do to look? So check the daily record every day. You can also, I sign up for daily record jobs emails, and they send them to me usually once a day. I like that because usually they have some interesting jobs that are not to be, they don't take recruiter submissions, but they're jobs that I can always say to people who call me that you should look at this job if I think it would be appropriate. Sometimes I send it. Sometimes I forward it to people I've talked to. But anyway, that's a great thing. That's a great resource. And then the government is hiring, not every entity, but you want to check USA jobs. You want to check county attorney jobs. You want to check Maryland attorney general jobs, Baltimore City Law Department, Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. They all have websites, and you never know. And also you may notice that people in some of these entities. That's a really good way. They should be on your list, and you should be reaching out to them, because if there's not a job now, there could be a job in the future. And that you want to be at the top of their list. Maybe there's a judge in town who needs a clerk. Typically, the clerkships are gone by now, but every once in a while, something falls through, and a judge is going to reach out to usually the career services people in the law firm, the law schools, and so you may want to reach out to the person in the law school who is in charge of the clerkships. How about nonprofits? Just two that I off the top of my head is the Maryland Legal Aid and House of Ruth. You've got quasi-legal and non-legal jobs, internships paid or unpaid. The unpaid ones are tough because we have to support ourselves. So if you're going to do an internship, it may be several days a week, and then you have to do something else to pay the rent. Also, there are temp jobs. Some and those they're advertised in the paper, but also some of the recruiting firms, including mine, are basically get resumes from law students who don't have jobs yet, and talk to them, and then keep them in a little database so that when they've got a big temp project, and it could be anywhere, and sometimes they're temporary to permanent, sometimes they're 3-6 month jobs, sometimes they're a couple week jobs, but it may be that you need to take and look for and take a temp job. And I would just get my resume into some of those legal agencies. And then, this goes back to this is not the road you thought you would be taking. So you may have to take a job that isn't your first or second choice, and you've got to focus on that. Next slide, please. So many law firms have hiring freezes. So this is like accepting the pandemic reality. This is the way it is. Many law firms have hiring freezes for associates. Many firms have cut the salaries or the comp of everyone in the firm to try to keep as many people in the firm as possible. So consequently, they will be less focused on hiring junior associates without experience. Adjust your expectations, because there are fewer jobs and there's greater competition for them. Your job search will take longer than you had anticipated pre-pandemic, and you will need persistence, and you will need to be really patient. And you might become anxious or disappointed or really down sometimes, but that's normal. And don't hold it in. Talk about it to friends and family. When you're talking about it, maybe to certain people you want, don't let them, the people who might be able to help you, don't let them see that you're really, really down if you are. Just say it, and I know this is going to take time. It's really hard, but I am determined, and I know that I will find something. Because people will want to tend to help you if you seem like you're the type of person who is helping him or herself. And do not define yourself by not having a job, or if you're not successful after you interview. And again, why? Because there are fewer positions and more people competing for them. You've just got to stay steady. You've got to keep searching, be organized, use that list. And it only takes one offer, just one. Next slide, please. I am a big proponent of LinkedIn. I'm hoping that every one of you has a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, please you look at some others and put yourself on LinkedIn. And I would say like just to, and you should be looking at your LinkedIn profiles. The most important things on LinkedIn is your headshot, the photo. You want the photo to be a headshot and wearing something professional. But you could you could take a headshot of yourself or have somebody take a headshot of you now if you don't have one. You know, put on something that looks professional and take the headshot and put that on. Don't use a picture from a party or in front of a brick wall, or and where you're cutting someone off. This should be all about you and all about professional, because that's what people see when they look at LinkedIn, and people use LinkedIn. Employers use LinkedIn and recruiters use LinkedIn. And then the other thing is you've got your photo and then you have a line, which we call the headline, that's right underneath it. The headline will default to, I think it's your most recent position that's listed. So we don't want that. I would suggest that you might put 2020 law school graduate. You can say seeking entry-level position, or you don't have to say that. You can just say 2020 law school graduate. If you want to put your law school, fine. But that's what I would say. If you, for example, are have some kind of, if you had a prior career, or let's say you had some kind of specialty in undergrad. So, for example, you're an electrical engineer. You might want to say 2020 law school graduate with engineering background, you know, or electrical engineering background, something like that, where it's going to catch someone's eye. And then on LinkedIn, there's a way that you can note that you're open to opportunities, and that should be on. You can write a note in there, or not, but just note that you're open to opportunities. The other thing is, it's not on this slide, but make sure on your LinkedIn profile that, so underneath the headline is your location. Make sure that your location is, let's say if you want to be in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, rather than, let's say if you're from, you know, Wisconsin, you don't want to say you're from Madison, Wisconsin. So make sure that that the location is consistent, because recruiters and employers will ignore you if you're not in the right state or city. And then maybe you want to write some articles on LinkedIn. Maybe. It just depends on what you have to write. Look and see what people are writing. But you want to friend people on LinkedIn, and you want to like or make short positive comments on posts by others. You just, again, it's elevating your profile. And you want to start strategically connecting with lawyers, recruiters, your people from law school, you know, some people you don't know. You might want to, and part of the way you may be reaching out to people is by LinkedIn. You may try to reach out on LinkedIn, and you ask to connect, and then you can write a note to that person. Make it short, but write a note saying, I really like to connect with you. I'm looking for a job and would love to ask your advice. And it should be mainly, you know, so-and-so suggested that I contact you, or I noticed we went to the same undergrad, or I noticed we went to the same law school, or something that you have a connection, and then try to connect with them. The other thing is, I mentioned before, you should start joining alumni associations. that is, you definitely need to join alumni associations also on LinkedIn. Um, and so high school, college, law school, and then join other groups. And I'll tell you, I had a search recently for a business that said to me, can you look for people in different states who went to these 3 high schools in Maryland? So I had to figure out how to do that. And the way I did it was I was able to look, I have the back end, the recruiters section of LinkedIn. So I was able to search for people who were in alumni on LinkedIn. That's how I could do it. And my daughter went to one of the schools and she wasn't on there. So I not that she shouldn't, but I saw one of her friends on there and I said, you better, go join that alumni association. You never know what that might help. All right, so can we go to the next slide? I say, like, you really need to take care of yourself during this pandemic, and I'm sure you've been doing that. It's been more than 6 months that we've been living this way. It could be another 6 months, and it could be another year. We just don't know. And so I like to say that you can have a choice. You do have a choice in life. Focus on what you can control. And it's not a whole lot. What you control is your actions and your attitude. And so, maybe your sense of centeredness is related to that chart, if that's how you might work. And that, every day you get up and you work on that chart, and then work on calling other people, and work on, looking for jobs, the way that I mentioned in the other slide. And you've got to be mentally tough. You have to be, and you can choose to be that. Because this is not the road you thought it would be. Resilience is really important too. And this is going to show you a lot about yourself. You really want to maintain your physical and mental health. And I'm sure you've heard this from the bar exam professionals, but if you develop a good routine, you want to eat well, you want to sleep well, get a lot of physical activities, and you want time to relax. If you meditate or do something to kind of clear your head, it could be running, it could be something else. Look into mindfulness. There are lots of videos online. It doesn't have to cost any money. And then I would say to you, be open-minded and flexible. You're likely going to have to take a job that is not your first choice, but that's okay. This is not going to last forever. But and so it makes you have to really think about what is important to you in life, and everyone is going to have a different answer. So I would just say thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions after Bridget.
Okay, thank you, Randy and Bridget. For everyone who's still attending this, if you have any questions, please send them our way, and Bridget and Randy will try to answer them. But first off, in terms of the questions that we already have, Bridget, are you okay to start answering those?
And I'm muted again. Sorry about that, everyone. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we had a question first about someone who is already barred in Maryland but wanting to take the UBE. Will that complicate things if I sat for the Maryland bar again to take the UBE when I am already barred? Maryland, first of all, let me say this is probably a question that you are going to want to check with the bar examiners directly, just to make sure, because that's a little bit of a complicated situation. I can tell you that Maryland does not allow what we call courtesy seating. Traditionally that would mean, maybe someone was seeking admission in a geographically inconvenient UBE jurisdiction. They wanted to sit in Maryland. So Maryland does not allow for that kind of thing, but I would recommend just double checking with the bar examiners for the specifics, just since it's a bit of a unique situation regarding taking the UBE if you already took the Maryland bar before they went UBE. Let's see, we have another question that states, after studying for long hours for months, what is one thing you would recommend test takers do the day before either the Maryland exam or the UBE to relax, take your mind off the exam, get in the right state of mind before the big day? That's a great question. As much as you can, resist the temptation of studying the day before. Go for a walk, go for a hike, spend some time, doing something that you enjoy. Get outside, clear your mind, do a meditation, as Randy suggested. I think there's so many awesome mindfulness resources out there. And then lastly, just remind yourself of exactly how far you've come. I think just taking a look at all of your bar prep books, not opening them, but just taking a look and saying like, wow, all of that information is stuff that I already went through. Reminding yourself that you should trust yourself, trust the process, pat yourself on the back, take a deep breath, and a reminder that you can do hard things. You are totally capable of doing this, and do something that you enjoy. Maybe the day before that, if you're wanting to do something, I think that something proactive that can be done is take a look at the table of contents of one of your outline book that you've been studying from. I think that too often we get caught up in the details and trying to remember every little fact and every element. But if you take a look at the table of contents, it's a really, really great way to kind of mentally run through each of the testable topics on the bar exam. Kind of reminding yourself, oh yeah, this is how it all fits together. These are kind of the defenses that would go here, and remembering the puzzle, not, losing the forest for the trees. So I think that is a great thing to do, not necessarily the day before, but, the days immediately before that. But great question. I know that everyone has been putting in these long hours and that this has been a lot. So you definitely deserve to take that day before off and just remind yourself of how far you've come. There was another question that I'm happy to tackle about which bar exam employers look on more favorably. And I'm sure that Randy would have some insight on this as well. But when we're comparing Maryland versus UBE, after this current administration of this pared down version of the UBE, the Maryland bar and the UBE are truly one and the same. So, you will have to complete those additional Maryland requirements, make sure that you are aware of all those things that you need to do. But, taking the Maryland bar exam is no longer an option. So, that state-specific bar exam that students took years past, that I took when I took the Maryland bar exam, it's no longer an option. So employers, would kind of have no choice in the matter there. So it looks like that's it for me for bar exam questions, unless anyone thinks of anything else.
So I agree with Bridget. I don't think there's a difference that so don't worry about which bar exam you're taking either now or in February. In Maryland, they're both accepted. They will both be accepted. So here's a question. Here is a question. Some grads know what kind of field they want to go into. And what is your advice for people who can't find jobs in their preferred area? And what should they look for when considering jobs in other areas? Other areas meaning practice areas. That is a really general question and a really good question. So I'm just going to try to be like a little more, I'll be specific. So before the pandemic, I think actually Dina and I were both trying to help someone who really wanted to be an IP, intellectual property lawyer, but he really didn't. He just couldn't get off that, and I can't remember what ultimately happened, but he didn't listen to either one of us and initially, and but I the bottom line is that, so like, you know, let's say it's, you want to be a, you know, a patent lawyer, but there are just, patent law is just dead. And I don't, that is actually not true. But so you may have to say to yourself, okay, what else am I strong in? Okay, and what else is out there? So basically you have to figure out what is out there right now. The practices that are hot, and I'm going to come back to giving more advice. The practices that are hot are estate planning, but there aren't that many estate planning firms or jobs. So you'd have to get really lucky to get that kind of a job, and that's something that's pretty specific. Labor and employment, and so, you know, be looking for those types of, you know, the jobs. Labor and employment is both litigation and counseling, and then there is some litigation, and that's white collar litigation that at a very high level is very busy in not necessarily in Maryland, in DC. And healthcare law, but firms are not necessarily looking for entry levels, and so the thing is, you need to basically say to yourself, what is it that I want to do? Okay, if I'm not finding that there are any opportunities, then you just look for something else that you think might be interesting. And I think it's a mistake to go into a law firm, let's say if it's a firm, thinking that, oh, I will go in as a litigator, but I really want to be a corporate lawyer. That doesn't, it's very unlikely that that would happen. So you have to kind of just accept that right now you might have to take a position that you don't want. And I would say, look for what's out there. That's part of what you're looking for when you're calling people and saying, what kind of practices are people looking for? Are law firms looking for? The other thing is, people think they want to go to a big firm, and that is not likely to happen unless you already have a job. And some of those jobs have been reneged on anyway. Some of those offers have been pulled. So what you want to do is, if you want to be in a law firm, you want to look for smaller firms that might really be interested in bringing in somebody new to help. And that's where career services comes in too. And then I would say I am really, really a proponent of going and looking at the government jobs. I know a lot of people who have gone to government and stayed there their entire careers and are so happy. They've got great insurance. They've been able to retire younger than other people, and they have they have a balance in their life. And but you can always also go from government into the private sector after a few years. It's not always easy, but getting a job is the most important thing, and a job where you're going to have good mentors and get experience. So I can't, like, if you came to me and asked me specifically, I would then have an opinion on, okay, if you can't do this, let's look at your resume. Let's talk about what you're good at and or what you want to do or don't want to do. And then let's figure that out. I don't know if I totally answered the question, but that's being general. I'm not sure. And then, oh, another really good question. What can graduates do to make themselves stand out from their competitors? Well, the first thing is having a very good resume. And again, that you should rely on your career services professionals to go over them and help you with them, and make sure they look really polished and focus on substance. And standing out. Part of standing out is having a good LinkedIn profile, and they can talk to you about that as well. But also how you reach out to people on your list and then way beyond your list. How you go about strategizing and what you say and how you follow up and how you present yourself professionally. You also want to have a good writing sample that's ready to go. But a lot of it is just in that kind of presentation on paper and in your video interviews, because it is really hard. And then one is how do I go about connecting with a recruiter such as yourself, and is there a fee for your services? That's a great question. Okay, so recruiters. Okay, I typically place lawyers from one law firm to the next, but I also place lawyers in businesses as well. Some of my colleagues do that interim and the temp work. I don't. That's a separate department. But what you can do is, so lawyers. I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer, but I'm a recovering lawyer. Recruiters, you don't have to pay a recruiter anything. How I make money is when I place somebody into a law firm, my company gets a fee based upon their first year compensation, and then I get a percentage of that fee. The lawyer or lawyer to be does not have to pay anything. Having said that, typically recruiters do not place lawyers who haven't been working for, let's say, 2 years. Could be 18 months. But I would suggest to you, and you can call me. My information is on the website, and if you call my work number, it goes to my cell. So I'm always reachable, or you can email me. I'm happy to give some unsolicited or solicited advice. But what I would do is look at the search firms, and you can Google legal search firms and look at the people who do temporary placements. I can certainly connect you with people in my entity that do that. But they're not going to typically be able to help you get a job. Although once in a while, let's say a recruiter from a law firm will say to me, do you know, we're looking for a recent graduate. Have you come across anyone? So I always keep a list of people that might fit, that bill. Usually it's like a recent graduate, a judicial clerk, or somebody between graduation and a year. I have my own list of those people, and then I just tell them. I tell the recruiters that I will reach out to them and have these people reach out on their own. Do we have any other questions? I don't, let me just go back in. I don't see any. Are there any other questions?
It looks like that's it. We don't have any more questions, so I think we're just about ready to wrap up. Thank you, Randy and Bridget, for being here. That was very helpful. For the attendees, we do have your contact information, so we will be sending the PowerPoints and certain handouts. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you.